It's like a bunch of 20-year-olds. Yeah, he was on he's not German, he doesn't speak German, he just has some translate for him and then he learns it phonetically. But he has like a desk concert, like he's like teaching out with Bridgers. He just has like the real deal, and they just like some people are like really hard. We kept like going into a room and everyone else was
I'll second the motion. Aye. I move we accept the orders up through November 23rd.
Yeah, for some reason, they've gone, it's not, historically, it has been to test 8 or 9 different areas in Wells Brook.
Right.
To get a sense of, where they may be discharging or where it may hit high. For some reason, it's morphed and a couple of them have called it the swimming, so I think Endine has now labeled it the swimming sample, but historically it's just been tracking, I can't think of the word, in Wells Brook.
That's the word for conservation.
Thank you. Tracking E. coli in different areas of the brook to see if there's any consistency.
And I know that the surveys of the
just so that. Tyler,
Okay,
and then to do the
Oh, I see.
fiscal 23 budget update after Tyler, and then we'll do the actual budget fiscal year 24, just so that. Larry's not.
okay, makes sense.
So we need a motion for those adjustments to the agenda.
Check.
Sure.
So I'll make the motion that we adjust tonight's agenda as discussed.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Are there any public comments? I would like to make one. I would like to thank 9 members of the PCA and the volunteers who helped make the polling area go very smoothly this year. And I just want to voice my appreciation for the work. Thank you. Okay, on to new business and fiscal year 22 audit. Dave?
I'm just going to introduce Tyler Kimberly, who is filling in for actually Bonnie Dow. Bonnie Dow did our audit this year, but wasn't feeling quite right, so she called in the bullpen here. So we have Tyler back to go over this year's audit.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, full disclosure, I did not do this audit. I'm just filling in for Bonnie here, and looking through, you guys should have 2 documents. One's going to be a governance letter, and then the other one is a longer report that contains the auditor's report, the financial statements, the notes of the financial statements, and then the report on internal control. Just to kind of highlight from those documents, the governance letter that you have, that document just kind of goes through some of the key things, timing of the audit, any audit adjustments that we had, stuff like that. So you'll see the audit took place primarily in August. There were about 12 proposed audit adjustments, and those are discussed on page 2 of that governance letter. And overall, I'm told the audit went smoothly, and the town was well prepared for the audit. And Bonnie and I to do the audit, so that was great. That's awesome. The financial statements, you'll see our independent audit report, pages 1 through 3 on the larger document, the financial statements and the notes that have the financial statements and the notes. That audit report is unmodified. I was clean. There weren't any issues that came up in the financial statements that, would cause them to depart from GASB reporting standards, so that's also good. You will see that there is a restatement. In the statements, it goes between general fund equity and the capital projects fund equity, and that's simply to correct for prior transfer that was done instead of looking at an interfund amount, and how it relates back to that 3/4 intersection, which I actually do remember back when I worked on that audit. That was a highlight there, the restatement, and you'll see at the end there's a report on internal control, but there's really nothing to highlight there. We didn't note any material weaknesses in the town's system of financial reporting, or controls over financial reporting, if you will, or any significant deficiencies or anything like that. That's pretty much the highlights. There was a new standard that was implemented relating to leases, but that really didn't change anything. It just kind of moved some the classification of a vehicle to a debt item rather than a capital lease item. So not too significant there. But that was pretty much what I figured I'd initially go over, and obviously we can dive into more details, and if there are any questions I can't answer, I can relate them back to Bonnie, and we can get back to you guys.
Well, I would just say I'm certainly not in a position to ask questions about an audit, you know, just because I know nothing about accounting. But I'm very happy, and I'm not surprised that the town was well prepared, because I think Martin does a really good job, and it's good to hear that confirmed. So thank you.
Okay, so fiduciary funds, the Merritt Campbell, are the fiduciary funds that are highlighted, is that the Merritt Campbell monies? It's about 36,000.
On page, I didn't bring it up with me.
25.
On page 25, I think there's a listing of,
Private purpose.
Yeah,
trust
if you
fund.
look at page 28, note 8, down at the bottom, you'll see private purpose trust fund, restricted fund balance. And I believe that's what you're looking for. It's the Recreation Department, Conservation Trust, Justin Laundry Scholarship, Library Memorial Fund.
so Tyler, he was asking about the Merritt Campbell Fund, which is a little higher up in the permanent funds, restricted fund balance. You got the Merritt Campbell's, Zoe Richardson, and the Ray Sapp Memorial.
Right, but I'm asking about on page 25, what the inter-fund receivable for the fiduciary fund?
That is really just due to the fact that the general fund is holding all the cash. And you see this oftentimes in towns and in schools. The general fund will have all the cash. There'll be one main account, or maybe one more account, but the cash is all in the general fund, and then the funds just show a receivable from that fund, and then so the general fund shows a payable, because they would owe the other funds the cash. But rather than have all these different cash accounts, you just have one. That's more or less what that is. It's basically the cash piece that the private purpose trust fund has.
Some other bond that I didn't know. Well, I looked for my other question. Are there any other questions for Tyler?
I got a few.
Jim, go ahead.
All right, so I'm just going to go in kind of order of appearance in the documents. So the first question I had was around the audit letter, page 3. So there's one line item there that I didn't quite understand. States the management provided a written representation in connection with the audit in a letter to your firm. So I just didn't know what those representations were.
You said page 3?
That's right.
Now, is this on the, is this in the governance letter?
I believe I'm not sure if it's the governance letter, it's the letter that was dated August 24th, if that's the governance letter.
I think it
It'd be
is. I
the
think that's
last
right. I
section.
think that's right.
Oh, yes, okay.
It's the independent auditor's report, Tyler.
Yeah, okay. So that one, at the conclusion of an audit, we send out generally 2 documents. One document will be basically an approval for any proposed audit adjustments, You know, auditors, we're not management. We can't make management decisions. So we essentially just propose these audit adjustments, and then we send out an approval form that management then signs or doesn't sign, depending on, you know, just basically saying, yes, we agree with this. And then we go ahead and then, you know, put those into our audit software and then just match things up with the town's set of accounts. And then there's another document, the management representation letter, and that basically just kind of goes through all the different areas, basically in a nutshell, that management has provided us with all key information, and it kind of highlights the different ones. You know, litigation, is there anything there? You know, fraud, abuse, is management aware of anything? Just all these different representations that management reads through and then signs. And that's what that is referring to.
Thank you. In the audit report itself, on page 2, it says that you have no opinion on the effectiveness of the town's internal controls.
Right, we're not actually auditing the town's internal controls.
Yeah, so the question is, should we have somebody review the town's internal controls? Would that be best practice?
I know, at least with the audit, we do look at the controls. You know, oftentimes, at least with Vermont, you know, it's a smaller state, smaller entities. You know, you do come across, you know, issues surrounding segregation of duties and stuff like that. So I guess to answer your question, you know, it's good that you don't have any items like that being reported. Obviously, if, you know, you guys are looking at processes and, you know, you have a question or something doesn't look quite right, I mean, definitely don't hesitate to, you know, reach out. You can definitely have additional, you know, procedures, services provided, you know, to examine, you know, something in more detail. But the audit itself will kind of look at everything at a higher level, and then if there are any, you know, things that really come up glaring relating to financial reporting, that'll most likely
Right.
get reported,
So I mean, you're
if
really
it's
focused
significant.
on the financial report, not the controls within the town. Right. So, you know, I'm not sure if there's a benefit to having an independent evaluation of those controls, or it's just something you don't recommend for towns, you're not worried about it.
I mean, no, it definitely doesn't hurt to have done. I mean, we do look at the, you know, at the disbursement process itself. So we look through, you know, payroll disbursements, we look through non-payroll disbursements. But, you know, if there's some other process that's not really related to the payment, you know, receipt side of things, or that's kind of more non-financial in nature, yeah.
Okay, thank you. On page 5, current and long-term liabilities. So there's a significant increase year over year. And I'm just wondering what are kind of the main levers that drove those increases? Is it the ARPA money? Is it the Three Corners bond, or what is it?
It looks like you guys, well, I just glanced at page 16, that came up, and there was proceeds from long-term debt. That's going to get detailed farther down in the notes. So if you go to note 7,
On
you'll
which
see
page?
there was a general obligation note from the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank for $1 million or so. So that would have added to that total.
Okay, so the primary driver on page 5 of our total liabilities you're saying is the bond, I think.
That certainly looks to be the case. Page 27, note 7 has a nice little table kind of beginning. Long-term debt balances were about $311,000. This is at the governmental activities level, and then at the end it was about 1.2 million. So that certainly would have been an increase there.
And then on page 6, grants and contributions. Again, it was kind of a significant increase year over year, and wondering what drove that increase.
Well, you can start looking at the budget to actual. Of course, it may not be in there. Yeah, that could be a Bonnie question. We can definitely get back to you on that one.
Yeah, that'd be
It
fine.
looks like, yeah, it looks like the majority of the grants coming into the special revenue fund. That was about $500,000 or so in 22. Or, the pages that you are referring to are coming from a document called the Management's Discussion and Analysis. And that document is actually not audited. I'm not trying to defer the question, but Martin or Dave.
Yeah, so Tyler, if it's $500,000, that would have been the first ARPA payment that came in. It was a little over 500 grand, and ARPA was considered a grant.
Okay, I only have a couple left, so I'll be able to go pretty soon. So page 6 and 16 talks about, I think, the fund analysis and surpluses. So it looks like the surplus for the year is $258,000 and change. Is there another surplus for the highway fund? Is that just the general fund surplus?
What page are you looking at, Jim?
So I guess 16 probably captures it. Excess of revenues or expenditures, $258,000. So I'm assuming that's the general fund surplus at the end of the year.
So page 16 is general fund budget to actual, and it's looking like one of the main increases to that is from that bond, the proceeds from that bond that was taken out in 22. Outside of that, revenues were higher than budgeted. It looks like your taxes came in really strong. You must have been good at collecting taxes in 22 compared to what you guys were initially thinking with the budget, or that's just a guess, since it's over budget, so that's good. So it looks like taxes was a strong driver, the proceeds from the bond was another strong driver, and expenditures were a little less than what you guys had budgeted, so.
So, but that, what we have here is a $258,000 surplus, right?
Well, you
Like
had
five-
an overall net change in the general fund of $854,165.
Right, so just go up
And
like
then
five lines from there.
Sorry, say that again?
Go up 5 lines to excess of revenues or expenditures.
Oh, okay, 328,158. Yes. So
the variance.
Yeah, I was. Right. So that's comprised of the revenue being over what you guys had budgeted, and it looks like the main driver there is taxes.
Yeah.
So one thing
so
there.
I guess the question is, do we have a surplus, and what is the amount of the surplus? Now, as I reread this, I think it's
okay, so-
328,000. Is that right?
Well, that would have been the kind of your budget. Well, I think you really should look at the net change in fund balance number at the very bottom of 16, 854,000, because that's really what the general fund balance would have increased by, not the 328.
Right, well, the 328 plus the bond would be the 854. I'm sorry, plus ARPA would be the 854, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 854, and then that change is then going to carry over if you look at page.
Yeah, so
Look
maybe
at page
I'll direct to Dave for a minute. Do we have a surplus from last year that we now have funds available?
The surplus from last year carried over, correct?
Let me rephrase that. At the end of fiscal '22, right, did we have a $328,000 surplus from basic general fund expenses? Because taxes were higher and expenses were lower?
You'll have to forgive me, Jim, I wasn't quite prepared to get into the details on this. I believe that the surplus from last year, whatever that number was,
Fiscal year '21.
fiscal year '21,
Yeah.
that we thought may be hindered by that $100,000 transfer, that rebound, that restatement. We ended up with enough surplus in 2022 to absorb that restatement of $100,000. So the 300, whatever the surplus was that existed at the end of 2021 exists still at the end of 2022. What I can't remember, Jim, is at the end of the restatement, what that surplus was at the end of 2022. But I believe there was still a surplus at the end of 2022.
Okay. So I guess my request is that we understand how much surplus there is kind of being carried forward into '23
Yep.
in the general fund, the highway fund.
So so we can get into the highway fund later.
Yeah.
That's actually in here. And I think maybe even that, Tyler, that 133,888.6 at the end of 17, maybe the net change in fund balance, 133.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so my goal, and
Yep.
we don't have to answer the question now.
so, but next meeting, I will have what's gonna carry over, because there's a recommendation on that. But the remaining highway stuff, I can get into as part of the budget conversation.
Yeah, so I'm just hoping we can get, for the board, clarity. What's the
and actually-
total amount of surplus currently
So,
in
Yeah,
both funds? Yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick? Just to make sure, you've looked at the details on page 14, because page 14 is going to detail what the general fund balance started at, that change, what it is at the end of the year, as well as the highway fund and the other governmental funds.
Right.
leaving the 365, 298, 2021 as restated. However, I'm pretty sure that the general fund balance was not 1,219,463. I think that's spread out amongst the other funds.
All right, so you understand my question. We can move on. We'll cover it another meeting. You've already answered one question here about.
It's actually part of the budget recommendation that will come next week.
Okay.
As far as the highway fund, if you go to page 28, I believe it is, and I've spoken quite a bit about this because we've got the Three Corners intersection project coming up.
Yeah.
So on 28, at the very top part, you'll see highway fund committed fund balance 590,415.
Yeah.
Here's your highway number right there.
So that's the cumulative balance that we've carried forward. up
That's a
until-
cumulative
up
balance,
until-
590,415
till
that we
June
would work
30th.
off as of today. Just because we don't know where we'll end up at the end of 2023.
Right. Okay. So,
And then the general fund surplus is also detailed on page 29, right at the end of FY '22, 22,090 relates to a prepaid item, so that's kind of taken already. But then there's $1,062,000, which says it's unspent funding for the Three Corners intersection project.
Yeah, okay, so that, I'm
But-
sorry.
but that
'cause
includes the
hadn't
bond.
been moved.
So it sounds like we have about a little over $500,000 in highway, a little over $300,000 in general. We'll get the numbers figured out later. You already talked about the restatement of the $99,000 from last year. The last question I had was around page 12, and just a question because of lack of knowledge. Have we fully funded our pension liabilities?
So are you referring to the Beamers pension plan?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is, I mean, short answer is yes. The town has made all of the contributions that the state has required, all the payments that the state has required. It's further detailed near the back. There's some supplementary information, some schedules. If you look at page 31, it's probably a good one at least to start at, and it'll just kind of give some history on it, kind of where it's at in terms of funding. Right now, that Beamer's plan, is, at least the actuaries, this June 30, 2022 column, it's based on actuarial data as of June 30, 2021. So everything's always a year behind, but you'll see, at least for the period June 30, 22, that the state, the state reports that are issued, they are saying that the Beamer's pension plan is 86% or so funded. Definitely better than some previous years, for sure.
But is that something we don't have control over anyway? The state just tells us how much money to put in, and that's the end?
Yeah, the state sets the contributions, and then they, do an allocation, and then the town gets, its portion, if you will, or its piece of the pie. And that's pretty much what you're seeing here on page 31. So, if everything had to get squared away to, at June 30, 2022, that the town's proportionate share of that net pension liability would be about $300,000 or so. But, that's based off of, what the actuaries are assuming for investment return, healthcare, payouts. There are a lot of moving parts to that.
Okay, thank you. And that's it for me.
In response to Jim, you answered my other question, so thank you. Clyde, any questions? Not really. Mary?
I already stated that I don't know anything about this stuff. So no,
Okay.
no.
And Mandy, no. Dave, any additional comments? Tyler, thank you for joining us and making the presentation.
Okay, thank you. You guys have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you, Tyler.
Okay, then going on to the current fiscal year budget update.
Good evening.
For Martin.
Good evening. Through the end of October, 33 months, 33% through the fiscal year 2022. On the revenue side, as you can see, the current taxes are sort of collected more as a receivable. So if we take what we've actually collected for receivables for revenue through the end of October, we're at 31%, so we're on track as far as the revenues on the general fund. The rec department is at 26%. They're on track to hit their target by the end of the fiscal year, because summer camp, basketball camps, and all that's going to be collected over the next few months. So the revenues, as far as the general fund and the rec department, are on track as we're expecting. Any questions on the general fund revenue? The highway department revenue, as you can see, we haven't got our grants and aids coming yet, but we're hoping to see that pretty soon, but they're also right on track. Any questions on the highway revenue? Yes, sir.
On the actual, if you haven't collected the tax, how can you have that number in there? Because you haven't collected the
It's set up
100%.
as a receivable. So I set up a receivable in the balance sheet for the 162,000. And when the state pays me quarterly, I reduce the receivable. Next year, I will not do that. It'll be straight up as the money comes in. Because the state's gonna be over, they're paying a little bit more than what we were anticipating. But I don't know what the final total will be yet. On to the expenses. As you can see, the general fund is at 39%, but through assessments, summer camp payroll, landscaping, and appropriations, we've prepaid quite a bit of ahead of time. So if we reduce it to the actual 33% paid, we're at 32% of the 33% budget. So the general fund is right on track at this point. You will see some line items that are definitely over 32%, because we've had to prepay them ahead of time. Any questions on the general fund?
I have a question.
Sure.
So there are line items left in here that they're all zeros across all three columns. Is that like an accounting thing where you have to leave in items that were once active?
No, I've been slow. If you look at the revenue sheet, you'll notice that it's really shrunken over since the last meeting.
Yeah.
I'm going through the accounts and slowly taking them out that
You can remove them?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
But in case they crop back up. But yes, I've been slowly but surely going down through the accounts that haven't been touched. And so NIMRIC likes you to keep it for 3 years, but if I've noticed we haven't used it in 2, I did that on the revenue side, but I found quite a few accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am slowly but surely taking them off, so.
I just assumed they had to be in there and that's why they were still there.
Yeah, no, I've been slowly but surely
That's great.
whittling them down.
Yeah, good. Save some paper.
Yeah, absolutely. The highway budget, as you can see, it says it's at 38%, but the paving and the sand that we've prepaid, if we bring it to the actual percentage, the highway department is only at 29% year to date, so they're running right on track. The summer highway, we're not using in accounting again until April. We will be using the winter side as far as the payroll goes with the overtime section over the next 6 months. Any questions on the highway expenses?
So if I'm on the right page and understanding this, page 1 of 3, highway fund expense,
Yes.
there's some things in there that I'm not sure, why are the north end streetlights, south end streetlights, the Route 12 communication tower, pole rental, why are they in that category?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Oh, okay.
Highway radios, et cetera, kind of going through that. But the lights, for whatever reason, since I've been kicking around, always been in the highway fund.
I never noticed.
Been
Not
there
really
for-
observant.
Is that
I'm not really observant, apparently. Okay.
No, yes, they've been there as long as I've been here too, so.
I mean, I've certainly noticed them, but not where they were exactly.
The communication tower, like I said, the radios the guys use, goes through the
Okay.
communication tower.
Where is that on Route 12?
By the garage, isn't it? Yeah. It's out Route 12.
Way out, or?
You go on Route 12, just after, before Damon Road, you take a left, drive out to dead end road, and take a Jeep trail all the way to the top of the hill, and then out there.
Really? Not on Damon Road, but before Damon Road, there's a left?
James Dow used to live, it was James Dow's property.
Oh,
Dustin Dow's property.
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Have a nice time. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to the budget presentation.
Okay, we're on to the fiscal year '24 budget. The only real good thing about budget season is that Thanksgiving is always like a couple days later. So have put a fair amount of work into this. This is an extremely rare year. It's a difficult year. I've never seen anything like this. We saw a glimpse of it last year. We were at 4.67% inflation. This year we're at 6.9. That's in the northeast section of the country. Nationwide, we're about 8.7. So certainly new territory for me. So just to give you a little bit of insight as to how the budget comes together, it starts off with the department heads. Martin sends out the budget, they fill it in or return the spreadsheet. It comes into Martin, and then Martin makes up basically the bigger spreadsheet that comes together, pulls all the numbers together. Martin fills in a lot of the blanks that are not filled in by the department heads, some of the separate buildings and et cetera. And then I come in and I do, which is basically the administrative portion, and then I go through it and I shape it based upon our needs or where I think where the budget's going to go. Usually kind of the bigger picture, and then I kind of drill down and just make sure that the numbers look right. I do look at every department. I go through line by line, kind of make sure it all adds up or there's nothing really exorbitant in there. And then it comes to you guys for presentation and essentially adoption. Again, in the Northeast, we're looking at a 6.7% inflation rate right now. So to give you some insight, anything less than 6.7, really we're starting to cut the budget. We're starting to cut back on that because the dollar is not worth what it was prior. So if we're going to have a budget at 2% increase over last year, we're not keeping up with inflation, we're not keeping up with our spending, et cetera. Something comes in over the 6.7 number, obviously we're going to start seeing increases over inflation and increased spending, et cetera. So we worked hard, understanding that 6.9 right out of the gate is tough for anybody. And it's also particularly tough because the last 5 years, really, we've been working on a budget trying to increase items, particularly highway items, to bring that spending up to where it needed to be. Again, 5 years ago, the paving budget was at 80 grand. We really didn't have anything really for hard pack. On the general fund side, we have added or we reestablished the buildings and grounds position. We established a summer position that basically picks up slacks with the cemeteries and Sumner Falls, a little bit with Foster Meadow Fields. So we slowly worked over the 5 years to bring this up, and some of those budgets over the past 5 years have been kind of hefty. You know, we saw a 10% increase across the board one year. So knowing that we're coming out at 6.7 was a challenge, although I think that we've come up with something that kind of bridges the gap between what we're seeing for inflation and where we need to go in the future. I'll start off with the highway department. I'm going to start there because nothing, Bill, against you, just every year that's kind of the more where we've seen the biggest increases, and this year is not anything different. And I'd like to add, with that 6.7, we really strive to basically keep things as they were. We haven't added anything. What we've looked at is basically keeping the status quo.
making sure we keep up with our expenditures. With an exception of the highway department, and here we have a couple of projects coming down the pike that we need to take care of, add some expenses, and we also have inflation. But again, with both the highway fund and the general fund, you're going to see that the wages and the health insurance really drive this budget. Again, we increased wages across the board based upon the consumer price index for New England. Again, that 6.9% number. I'll remind you, July 1st, we applied, or we gave them 3.5% of that. So we upped that 3.5% of that 6.9 July 1st. If we can't cover it with the budget, we talked about that $55,000 coming out of ARPA. But we didn't budget for that. Okay, we talked about using ARPA, but it wasn't in the budget for the following year, so that 3.5 is in there, but the remaining 3.4% to get to 6.9, if I've done my math right, to round out that 6.9, it all still needs to be in there. Even though we've given them the 3.5% already, the increase for the wages is 6.9. Health insurance, we saw close to a 20% increase on health insurance. Martin and I did talk quite seriously about going from the gold to the silver plan in either MVP or Blue Cross Blue Shield. It would have kept our prices or our expenses relatively stable. However, the difference between the gold and the silver for the employee, the benefit to them was pretty substantial. Really not worth knocking it down from the gold to the silver. And I'll just kind of remind those, or maybe introduce those that weren't here. About 4 years ago, we did go from the platinum to the gold on the health plans. And going to the silver, I just didn't feel as though it warranted, even though that we saw the increase that we've seen, but we did give it some thought. So on the highway side, ultimately we have an 8.58% increase. What's driving that, you'll see it highlighted on the expenses part. The major drivers is under administration, under summer maintenance, and on paving. And I will drill down to that a little bit here. So on the administration, it's not highlighted on the highway side, but you'll see the increases here. These are wage related. It's not wages, but the FICA is the Social Security aspect or expense to the town for the highway related to wages. So you see an increase there. The retirement is tied into wages, so you see an increase there. But right here, the jump from 104 to 130 is health insurance. And if you look down, the big driver between the 217 and the 242, that 25,000 or so that you see there for the bump in health insurance is kind of the driver in the administration part of that. Under summer maintenance, this is where wages start to pop up. You'll see buildings and grounds goes from 43 to 47. You'll see that the labor here goes from 180 to 191. Everything else, again, we tried to keep stable, so you see a lot of numbers carrying over. Subcontracting stays at 25, for instance. Tree removal stays at 10. But here you start to see an increase here from 5 to 10 for crack sealing. This is something that we've been meaning to do the last couple of years. When the roads committee met and made recommendations to the select board, we spoke about crack sealing quite a bit. We haven't done all that much leading up to and including this year. It's not for lack of effort, really. Bill spent some pretty decent time with a couple of different people looking at the roads and where we could crack seal. And to be honest with you, in most instances, unfortunately, the road is pretty far gone. However, we do have some paved areas that are coming up. We paved 4 to 5 years ago Brownsville Road. We've got portions of Queeching Road now. Those are starting to show some cracks and will need to be addressed. So we will and are looking at getting to crack sealing. We've done enough paving in certain places that it needs to be addressed. We do look to focus on some of that. And also, due to the work that Bill did, and speaking with the folks, the 5,000 is really an under budgeted number, and we've upped that to 10. And that's something that we've got in our purview, and that's why you see an increase there. Again, you see a lot of some similar numbers here. You see stone, hot mix, hard pack kind of staying the same. However, this number, again, inflation catches up with us. Culverts, the price really spiked on us. Plus, between the Clay Hill Road project, the second side, hope to do the Route 5 side this year. Need to do at least 2 culverts there. I think we got like 4 on Jennyville Road, and we got a couple others around town. So we spent about $12,000 in 2022. We expect to spend the same. So you do see an increase there. The one other place that you see a jump, however, is in this grants and aid. Fortunately and unfortunately, so that means that it's a jump of about $15,000 to our bottom line. We are going to account for that. It is going to be an expense. However, if you come over to the revenue side, because it's a grant, we're going to get an offset on that, and the number also is going to be bigger. So on the revenue side, you see a jump here from $17,500 to $31,000. So it's an increase on the expense side, but there's also an increase on the revenue side, which is a good thing. So the state did open that up. That is, the grants and aid is for ditching. So we will continue with that next season. The other one that was highlighted is paving. We go from 200 to 220. We worked really hard to get to 200,000, only to get to 200,000 and realize that in this day and age, with the asphalt pricing, particularly the oil, and the labor that everybody's paying for labor these days, 200,000 really isn't getting us as far as we'd like. That's an item that we did increase. I don't see any way around that. If we don't increase that, we're truly going backwards. And to go backwards on our paving is not where we want to go at this point. Just for reference, remember that the second side of Clay Hill, the estimate last year or this spring was for $350,000. So we were already anticipating $150,000 overage that we talked about ARP as well on that. We don't know what the updated estimate is going to be on that. I assume it's probably going to be a little bit more, but that 220 is an important number for us and to keep that going in that direction. Last thing I want to point out is equipment. You'll see here, this hit us really hard in fiscal year 22. We budgeted 45 grand. You can see we were kind of cruising around at 34, 39. We budgeted 45, and bam, we got hit with $68,000 worth of fuel, diesel fuel. We don't really know where that's going. It's been on the increase as of late, not quite as bad as it was in February of last year. Hopefully that stabilizes, but we kind of hedged our bet. Certainly, I think that $60,000 number we've got there is reasonable, if not perhaps maybe even low at this point, but we feel okay with the 60 grand. That pushes our equipment expenditures up, and I'll get into this in a minute, but we go from essentially that equipment expense, which includes money that goes to our equipment fund, one of those reserve funds that we have. Luckily, we've been putting in over 150 grand the last several years. We had budgeted for basically 156 to go in fiscal year 23. Be interesting to see if we get there, but in order to kind of absorb a little bit of this hit, it goes from, you can see the bottom line of equipment from 312,000, takes a jump to 324,000. The amount that we're putting into the equipment fund is a little bit less, but I think that, overall with that fund, I think it's a pretty good balance and doesn't really kill us on the equipment fund and our future purchases. So overall, I'll get into tax rates, et cetera, but the highway fund comes in a little high, but again, the 8.68 over the 6.9, really about a 2% increase, which for us is really pretty good. Again, we kept most expenses at same year over year, except for those things that we've identified that we think we're definitely going to get into. I'm going to hit on this for a minute because I talked about that equipment reserve. We do track and have a plan of what we're going to do with our equipment over the next 10 years, if not maybe a little bit more. So here, and for the most part, as of 2022, these numbers should match the audited numbers, but over the past 5 years, we have really kind of went to it with our fleet. Again, I think I might tell this story every year, but my first winter here, was coming back from Suicide 6 skiing, and between Queechee and Three Corners along Route 12, there was 2 of our trucks off the side of the road, had to be towed out the next day, and we were down 2 trucks for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. That's kind of what we had. We had trucks that were very kind of old and needed attention. That was kind of across the board. So we worked pretty hard. Bill and I sat down, we kind of put this together. They had kind of the makings of this. I don't think it was quite as sophisticated, but they obviously we weren't making the purchases, and they hadn't built up the amounts that we have built up and what we're looking to turn over for vehicles. However, this equipment fund was in place, and not every town has an equipment fund such as this. It's an excellent tool. It's an excellent financial tool. It keeps the town in good financial health. Also helps to keep that tax rate steady so that every time you need to make a truck purchase, you're not like, oh my God, we got to fork out 250 grand or we got to do a lease. Every now and then we get a little blocked up. We did do a lease for the bucket loader recently. But for fiscal year 23, which is what we're in, we have got a $200,000 or at least an estimated $200,000 purchase. This is for a new 6-wheel dump truck. It is presently the 6-wheel dump truck that we're replacing is a 4-wheel drive dump truck. That's why you see the increase in price there. We use this on Densmore Hill Road. We use it on Cream Pot. Places that a 10-wheeler is just too big to get into, but it needs oomph to get up and over Cream Pot, so we go with that 4-wheeler. And we've got that pegged here. This 75 grand is kind of, we haven't 100% decided yet. We're gonna lose a utility vehicle. We have a pickup truck. If it passes inspection, I'll be shocked. It's kind of a holdover from the new buildings and grounds truck. This one was gonna go away. I was gonna use it. I never did. Highway kept onto it. It's become quite the utility vehicle. We could definitely use another highway utility vehicle. We've talked about perhaps an excavator so that we can do more of the ditching ourselves, or at least when we're doing culverts, we can use the excavator, particularly when we do trenching into the culvert, or just give us the flexibility to do more instead of just the backhoe. And we've also kind of kicked around the idea of a second grader, a used one, to help us in the springtime. It takes us literally from March to July 1st to grade all our roads. It would be nice to quicken that up, because then we get behind and we spend summer months doing other things, and then we got to get back to grading. So that would just speed things up. So that $75,000 is a little bit of an option at the moment. It's going to leave us, if we go ahead and spend that, it will leave us with about 153,059 in our reserves. We're going to turn around in fiscal year 24, the one that we're in presently. The 1-ton pickup that we did purchase 5 years ago. However, we use it quite heavily. The underneath is starting to show wear and tear. It is getting to the point where when we trade it in, we'll still get a decent amount back for it, but give us something that isn't going to be quite as used as the one that we have presently. And then Bill's truck also is in desperate need of replacing. The end of fiscal year 24, that leaves us with 177,252 in the reserve, which is a good thing, and we add roughly 160, which is going to buffer our next purchases, and it's a big one. It's 2 10-wheelers. That's going to leave us with about $37,000. We'll need to kind of replenish as we go here. The 10-wheelers we purchased when I was fairly new here. We've gotten onto a schedule that Martin and Bill like. I kind of like it myself. We get a 7-year warranty. We trade it in on the 6th year. We get a decent return on the trade-in. And the dealer likes it because there's 1 more year left on the warranty that when he turns around on the secondhand market, it's got that warranty on it. And other people that are looking for a used vehicle tend to pick it up. So we do track this. This is what we got coming down the pike. That is one of the reserve funds. It's quite active, but as you can see, it is essentially financing our purchases. And at some point, we will need to, we get a little bit farther out. We may need to bond when we get to the grader, which is in the 2030s, or maybe in the bucket loader next time around. But for the most part, we are managing our assets, and this is an example of it.
Dave, do you want any questions, or you just want to plow through it?
So I'm getting out of the highway fund. If you have anything highway specific, I guess this is a good time. Otherwise, I'd like to just try and get through it
Yeah.
and just kind of power through it.
Just 2 general questions on the highway fund. The roads committee 5 years ago, did set a target of $200,000 for the paving, and obviously that was not in the inflationary times where we are today. My concern is if we raise the paving budget to 220 from 200, but yet we're facing a potential cost for Clay Hill Road in the low 300s. What's going to happen in fiscal year '25, when there are no ARPA monies to reach for, should we recognize that now, or?
So next year will probably be another $25,000 increase on your paving. I'll forewarn you now.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing 240 to 250 a year in paving. It's unfortunate, but it's slow.
Yeah.
The folks of North Hartland are really getting impatient with us, but we're focusing on the bigger roads.
Right.
The Clay Hill, the rest of Brownsville needs to be done. I'll get to Queechee at the end. Queechee is,
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
it's a
is kind of
separate-
its own
No, I
beast.
understand that, and we're using ARPA monies for the study, the engineering study right now.
So if we, and again, I'll get to, that is a little bit of a different beast. If
Yep.
we keep that out of the picture, again, we're on about a 12, 15-year kind of, would be our goal to kind of get through the cycle.
Okay.
And to get through the 10 roads, the 10 miles of road that we have. The wild card is Queechee Road, which in and of itself is just paving is like 850 grand. So we'd be like 4 or 5 years just doing that, which is gonna really set us back. And it really needs to be done. But the rest of them, you know, Brownsville Road is, you know, after Clay Hill is in need. A lot of our aprons, Best Road, Jim. But, you know, North Hartland and some of those roads as well. So,
Sure.
But what we've been doing is concentrating on the larger, more heavily traveled roads. And then we kind of make our way to the secondary roads from there. Another one's really bad is Station Road and Ferry Road are really pretty poor. So I think the moral of that story, Phil, is that we can't go backwards.
No, I understand, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to see the 200 to 220,
Yep.
but the reality is that it's $100,000 short. Yeah,
When 4 years ago, when we sat down with the planning committee, I don't think any one of us recognized the 350,000 just for that segment.
Right.
You
Okay.
know, we're playing catch up.
And the other one is just a curiosity. Should you add an excavator to the fleet of operational tools, could that be used to clean the ditches, which is always the proverbial challenge in Vermont? I don't know if that's, and that's, yeah, I don't need an answer to that. That's,
So in reality, that's kind of what we're doing.
yeah,
We're cleaning them, we're re-ditching. We got a long way to go on the re-ditching before we start going back, and we'll essentially be re-ditching what we've ditched. A couple budget seasons ago, I think I referred to it as like farming. You know, it's just a never-ending process,
understand
particularly with
that,
the roads.
V-Trans recognizes that as well.
So I think that's more what it looks like than, okay, we're gonna have some crew going back and cleaning them as we go.
Yep.
We've got 15 more miles of priority to do before 2035, so.
Okay, I want to keep you on track, thank you.
Two quick,
Okay, we have two questions here.
two quick highway related. So one is just a comment. Once we understand the highway fund surplus, right, some of that paving money could be wrapped up into that surplus. So maybe there's a path forward.
Something there, yep.
The other is really around the healthcare. So as I kind of look at just the highway, right, as I just look at the highway line item for health insurance, 2020, we were under by 23,000, 2021, 38,000, 2022, 44,000. Now, I do see that we cut the budgeted amount this year. We made the budgeted amount more reasonable. But what I think would be good for health insurance, and I don't want to budget to the penny, right? I know we need flexibility, but it would be good to understand based on people's selections today, right? What is the real number, right? And then maybe put a cushion on that. I'm not sure if we need to go to 130. All I can see here is that the trend is we're always under.
So as it stands today, we have the same crew we had last year.
Yep.
One has dropped insurance. Right now, it's been fairly consistent in the highway crew. So that number, if the highway crew stays the same, we'll need 130. We will need 130 if the highway crew stays the same. 2021 was last fall, actually 2022, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place here. So fiscal year '21, we had someone leave us. In fiscal year '22, we had a couple people leave us. And in those instances, when someone leaves us, they can come back. The person that was here may have been a family plan, and the person that comes in may not be a single or may not be getting it. Which means that, again, in 2022, when we lost a couple people and we gained a few back, and again in 2021 when we lost Travis, that's essentially what happened. As it stands now, again, since the fall of 2022, we've been basically stable with who we've got, and we've budgeted for exactly who we've got. Nothing more, nothing less. If we don't budget that amount, then we'll come in under budget.
So fiscal year '23, you budgeted for exactly what you thought you were going to spend?
Yes.
Yeah. And how are you doing against that? I don't have the sheet right in front of me. How are you doing against that?
If anything, we're probably over just a tad, because I think that, again, I can't remember exactly if, is it Ray?
Yeah, probably. We budgeted for family plan.
Robert may be under. He is not taking our health insurance, so we may be a little
bit
under on that. But at the moment, Rob is with us now, carrying through. And again, everyone else that we've got is
A third.
based upon the MVP amounts that we've got this year is what we budgeted.
Okay.
So if that stays through, then we're going to spend the 130. Now, if Doug or Bill ups and leaves us, or somebody with a family plan and we rehire it and they come in with a single, or if they come in, but I'm not going to budget as if I'm going to lose somebody and I'm going to get the single person. I'm budgeting for what I've got today, and that number is what's up there.
Okay. Thank you. Mary.
Dave, I have a small question. It was line item about the guardrails, and it was almost doubling the amount. Is that for inflation, or is that more guardrails?
So this section of Clay Hill Road, the one towards Route 5, there's a fair amount of guardrail that's going to need to be replaced going up that hill. And based upon the guardrail that we put in Barron Hill cost us a little over 10 grand. So we're kind of using that as a little bit of a guesstimate, really. But it's probably somewhat close to that.
And did I do have another question. Did workers' comp go down because there have been no claims? Is that how that works?
So workers' comp went down a little bit this year because we got a rebate from VLCT. However, we also have an employee dropping off. It'll be the third year dropping off of workers' comp, and particularly in the highway department. So we think that that'll carry through with the lower rate. But VLCT was kind enough to rebate participating towns this year. They must have had more money than they anticipated.
How can somebody opt out of workman's comp?
Can't
Or
opt
workers'
out.
comp?
So if you get injured, you take a hit for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
it's going to go up. I believe it's up to 3 years.
Yep.
It comes off and you kind of come back to normal a little bit. We had one particular person get injured at this calendar year, or calendar year 24. Will have been 3 years. He's going to drop off. So a little bit of that is going to come off as well.
Okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So a little kinder territory here, the general fund. As you can see, it's kind of more revenue, but it's 5.65% increase on the revenue. However, on the expenses, now I've broken this out, I think for good reason. We did this last year, in the year before actually, in the town report. And I'm starting to do it in the budget. For the longest time, appropriations was fairly stagnant. We didn't see any real increases. Kind of year after year, it was the same amount, except for maybe the fire department would go up a couple thousand. So it really didn't play into the tax rate, kind of like it does this year. So it's together because it's always been in our budget, but here you'll see now at the bottom, I've got the increase in our budget without appropriations because I have no control over what the appropriations are. And they, by statute, are free to petition. Even if the select board doesn't want them on there, they can petition and get put on the ballot. Doesn't mean it'll pass, just means that they can be put on the ballot. So this year we see an increase in appropriations, and it is one of the highlighted items. So I took the extra hour or two throughout this presentation, and I've taken out kind of the appropriations so we can kind of understand. Because I really ultimately want to focus on my budget, or the town budget, or the budget that you're going to pass and have control over. And that one is a proposed 5.4% increase that is below the 6.9 inflationary mark. So we do see some decreases here, although you'll understand where the decreases are. Some things just have fallen off, some loans and stuff like that. So we really didn't cut into anything. But nevertheless, we did see some downward trends and were able to take advantage of that. However, the wages and the health insurance still, as you go through this, play an important piece to this. So I'll drill down into some of the bigger players here. So administration is basically wage increases, but assessment in the constable. So those are kind of two things I want to get into here. I gotta wear my glasses, sorry. So under assessment, and assessment and constable are a little bit tied in here. Under the assessment, I've taken away, I went from 62 to 45 on the Vermont State Police. And to be honest with you, I think the Vermont State Police, that line item is going to become a fairly bigger discussion at some point. The reason why you see the decrease under the Vermont State Police is just they're not really fulfilling our hours. So I have talked to James, and I have shifted some of those hours to James, and you'll see what is here for a decrease kind of pops up under the constable for an increase. And I'll be honest, I think so far I'm pretty happy with James. You know, the visibility, being out, giving some tickets, being out in Sumner's Falls, etc. He is out there, but that's why you see a decrease under assessment. And essentially a pretty big increase under the constable. This is where we saw some things go away. So we had a fire truck, 2 fire trucks loans that we were carrying. One for 57 the last 5 or 6 years, 57 grand, another one for 29 grand. Those have gone away. However, the full payments now of the Three Corners intersection is going to pop up in 2024. So you see the increase there from 19, basically 20 grand to 74,000. So we're now repaying that. Again, we've got hopefully that coming up this summer. So you do see a decrease in the loans, the fire truck loans, although that bond payment does pick up. The finance office, and the planning commission. So the finance office, so let me go back. Under the general fund expenses, we had about 25 grand for legal services here. And that is now down to 20 because there's more than just legal services wrapped up in that. There's basically, it used to also be called professional services, so it's kind of legal, actually it's still up there, professional. So there's a few things wrapped up in there. So we took NIMRIC, which is essentially, was that the software for us to carry the software for that? For all the modules. So it was a little funky. This is just an accounting thing, a little funky having it in legal and professional. So we shifted it over to the finance office. So you see a decrease under the admin, but it pops up under the finance. Makes Martin look pretty bad, but it really is just a bookkeeping thing. There it is there. We actually have 6 grand budgeted for it. So you'll see the jump there. Again, wages play a part in this. But certainly the software going from professional services to finances is a change. The next one is the planning commission. We got an increase here. I've added money into this. We've spoken about survey. Par for course, or true to my word anyways, I said that or my word in taking the directive of the select board to the planning commission to do an actual professional survey. Numbers that kept tossing around was 15 grand. So there you go. There's the 15 grand under professional services for a survey. I would think maybe more like 10, but I kept it at the 15 just to be safe. And then we've got printing money in here as well at 4 grand. So that should come pretty close. I'll just reiterate, a little disappointment. There is a planning grant out there. They don't seem to be all that enthusiastic about it. It would have saved us, would have picked up about 80% of this. But nevertheless, it is in here. It is for them to do that. And it should carry them.
Wait a minute. There's a planning grant and they won't apply for it?
I won't say they won't apply for that. I think that they just, the window closed, they would have to do it in the spring. I don't think I heard them say we won't. I'm not sure I heard an enthusiastic outcry either.
Well, is it onerous? I mean, is it an impossible task that they can't do it?
I believe that, so we offered Sean when Sean was here. Sean is no longer here. So that, but I believe Two Rivers would probably offer some assistance on it based upon my discussions with him. So I kind of lied, John. I said I wasn't going to highlight you, but I am. And I'm highlighting him for a good reason. He is minus 0.61 or 51, I can't, glasses aren't working enough. And this is health insurance related. So with John, we went the other way. We had a person that was a new family on the family plan, and she is no longer with us. And our new employee is not taking our insurance, so he is $2,000 a year. So you see that drop accordingly. So that is a benefit to John and a benefit to the general fund. And again, this is kind of par for course. If there's anything I'd like to just kind of sum up, again, we've got wages here increasing, some wage-related items, health insurance being a big one. In this instance, it goes the other way to our benefit. We should thank Mason for that. But the rest of the numbers, this is in, a couple here and there. If you look at listers, there's some increases for, some seminars and stuff like that. In some of the other buildings, we have increases for electricity or fuel just based upon where we think the prices are going. But everything else is pretty much the same. With an exception here for John, the youth programs takes a jump, but that just reflects the success of those programs, and then we see that on the revenue side. So particularly with the rec folks, if it's program related and you see an increase on the expense, even if we didn't expect it, it usually means an increase on the revenue side that we didn't budget for either. But everything else is relatively stable. Or at least we're not trying to, again, we haven't budgeted for anything outlandish. Capital improvements, this goes down from $37,500 to $15,000. In my view, I'm going to be pretty well tied up, or we're going to be pretty well tied up with the Three Corners intersection project, hopefully. And it's in your town manager update. We have RFQs out for the rec building and Damon Hall. We're going to need to, or I'm going to be putting out an RFP for the Jennyville Road culvert fairly soon. So we've got a lot of activity. So some of this smaller stuff, and a lot of that activity is ARPA related and just larger scale things. It kind of picks up some of the smaller improvements that we were doing. So I think that's where we're going to be for most of the year. So you don't see an increase. There was a couple of years we were up at 60,000. We dropped to 35, down to 37.5, and now we're at 15. I think if we didn't have those larger projects, that might be a little bit more. I didn't put 0 because we still have things like the roofs to Damon Hall and to the rec center that should be looked at every year. It's been about 3 years now since we've had that looked at, so I'm expecting some issues there. I know looking up at Damon Hall, there's a couple minor problems that we've got, so we need to get some people up there and take a look at that, and the 15 is for some other things that may arise as well, but that's what I see with that 15. And then the total, I didn't completely lie, but on the buildings and grounds, you see an increase here. There is wage increases in the buildings and grounds, or slightly, or some supply things or tools, but I have put $10,000 into buildings and grounds for landscaping. So that is the one thing I might say is a little bit new and different this year. And I've been thinking about this for the last 2 to 3 years now because I love them, they're nice people, but the garden club is getting fewer and farther between. And if we get the initial weeding, that is awesome. But, and Clyde, I'm not taking away from what you and Bruce do on the front steps here. It's a little bit more than that. It's kind of the overall upkeep of Damon Hall. The rec center, I don't believe any of the volunteers cover the rec center. I think there's 2 people that do the library, but they're kind of focused on the porch and nothing else gets done around the porch. The fear here is essentially that you're going away. So
You mean dying off?
enthusiasm is waning.
Is that why you want the cemetery thing?
Yes.
Enthusiasm is waning. So that's in there because we're getting close to the time to turn the tide on that. And Clyde, I'd be more than glad to sit down with somebody or, I think that's kind of a delicate issue. But outside of what's being done actively, I think we could do more. And again, I'll just point out the rec center. I don't think there's any volunteers over there anymore for the rec center, et cetera. I think we're a little bit stretched with Rob and the summer guy. With cemeteries, we did a lot of painting, a lot of the buildings, et cetera. So at somewhere and at some point, we need to pick up that slack. I am going to let the library, they are going to have their own presentation on December 5th. I'm going to let them speak for themselves. You're also going to have the Hartland Volunteer Fire Department in to go over their budget as well. I do want to take a few moments. Again, I'm going to get into tax rates in a moment, but there's some overview things here. I'm going to start with, I guess, the rec center. A couple of things, and again, just to hammer, this is one of our reserve accounts, with 3 of them actually. We've been through this. John was in July. He talked about his want to transfer out $6,000 from the rec scholarships because we're endowed here and bring it over to special projects because we got a few things in mind here, and I'll get into that in a second. We've also got RACEAP scholarships. Those are scholarships specifically for ski runners in the winter programs. And why this gets separated out like this is because this money was given us specifically, invoiced specifically for this purpose. This was given to us primarily, we used to just put the covered bridges money into scholarships. Last year or the year before, John got a $40,000 grant that kind of came in and we put that, a lot of it towards scholarships. So we've got a little bit of money to play with. And again, that's why you see the transfer out here in July. But we have plans here, and actually, I was talking to John last Friday, we really don't have the money yet to do everything that we want to do, but we're getting there. So we got $33,000 in there. A couple of things that are on the slate, so to speak, is the North Hartland basketball court is one, and we just did the North Hartland tennis court, and that cost us a little over 10 grand. So we're looking at 10, probably 11 grand for that. We also need to hopefully not resurface, and I think John's going to need to do a little bit of research on this. We've got some cracks in the Foster Meadows basketball court, kind of the flagship court, so to speak. As it is, it's just like a road, so we're going to get water in there, and it's going to basically upend what we've got there. So ideally, it would be nice to kind of crack seal that, unless they tell us otherwise. We also have a water problem over on the hill by Route 5 across from Mike's. John and Bill have talked about putting in basically some ditching and some stone, just basically fix that drainage area so it's not coming down into the fields. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, we get a lot of runoff from Route 5 on that soccer field. Remember, there's heavy rain and puddles heavily, and then it's just, you get silt coming to, so it's changing the composition of the soccer field, of the soil there on the edges. It would be nice to basically dig a big hole and fill it with something like
The other thing still on the docket is the walking path. So if we do North Heartland and we do the drainage and we do maybe, I wouldn't even really bring in Foster Meadows basketball court yet. It's like a 15, 16 grand, so we're quickly down to about 18,000. We thought 33, we might be on the periphery for the walking path, but with 33, we're not in the periphery for everything. So we'll need to work through and kind of pick our priorities on that. Maybe come back next year with a couple of projects. Hopefully John continues, and I'll just reiterate, he does volunteer himself with Mason over at Covered Bridges. It's how we get that money from them each year. It's helping to fund a lot of this stuff. These particular projects are not coming out of the general fund. This is coming in specifically from the Covered Bridges. And again, that's why you see this sitting over in the reserve funds. But there is a lot of discussion, and John's been in front of the board in the last 2 to 3 years on those transfers, and to kind of give you guys an update as to where we're at with that. I also want to bring in, I do cover this kind of yearly. So policy, at least since it's kind of an unwritten policy, when I came on, I was kind of like, you know, rec centers usually have a policy on programs pay for X or Y amount. It's been explained to me over the years that essentially the program should pay for themselves and the town pays for John and Mason, and it's not completely the town. The school kicks in this fiscal year. The school is budgeted for $30,000 towards Mason. And that's for the work he does over at the elementary school as an athletic director. But based upon, and this is budgeted, and again, 2023 is budgeted as well, the rest of these numbers are actual. But this year, based upon budget, and the health insurance helps this, the revenue is covering 49.58% of our rec expenses. So to give you an idea, John, I'm sorry. That's, I believe, the remaining amount. So when we come over here, John and Mason combined, this is salary, health insurance, Social Security, you know, everything wrapped in there. John costs the town about $98,500, and I don't say this just to call John out or Mason. The total cost of the director and the assistant director is $154,854, and I go through this to essentially confirm that the programs and indeed are covering John and Mason at this point. So we're living up to what's been explained to me as kind of a policy of the rec center and where we need to be at, and that's holding true and has been pretty much since I've been here. And then kind of as a kick, I didn't quite complete, I got a little sidetracked this week, didn't quite complete this, but the after-school program also has been covering itself a little bit less in 2022. Budgeted in 2023 down to $7,000, and in 2024, we're basically at break-even point, which is a little concerning to me. We want to be making something after all this is done to kind of float the programs. However, part of this is also the recognition in the springtime, and I think that we've been focused on that aspect of it. But if you recall, we needed to close the after-school program in the spring. We basically were down to nobody. So the thought process here is that we upped the pay to these folks. There is a bonus in there for them if they last throughout the year for us. And we have a head person in Amy J. Cox who gets a higher salary than the others, gives it a little bit of structure. So far, we've been pretty successful with that. It's been sticking, 1 or 2 turnover, but for the most part, the core is there. So the thought process seems to be there, but I think that that's what's in play there. I'm only going to say that based upon, and you see this in past years, we budget and we kind of work with what we'd like our staff to be. However, what we'd like our staff to be and what it ends up with on a day-to-day basis are two different things. We get people that call in, people that can't make it that day or whatever, so we generally end up a little bit less on those expenses, but nevertheless, that's what we've got projected there. Fire trucks. So in the budget, you've got $68,000 budgeted for this year, specifically to go to the equipment fund. It's up $3,000 from before at $65,000. Jim, we talked a little bit about this last meeting. So here we are today, fiscal year 23. You will see that this number is the purchase price of the new forestry truck. Again, it's been ordered. Purchase and sale agreement's been signed. That number is true. We've been talking about a couple of the fire trucks that are in need of repair recently. That $35,000 number has been discussed for a little bit. They are going to need to take that out of this reserve account. Unfortunately for them and us, they can't take money out of this particular account unless it has voter approval. So we need to go to the voters, even for this $35,000 withdrawal. At the end of the day, it's going to leave us with about $52,000, which is a little lean. However, we do have a few years, and you see the deposits that we plan on making into this. And then we have in 2028 a purchase for a pumper truck. That number may be a little low, that $350,000. And then we turn around and we have to purchase a tanker truck in 2032, which essentially leaves us at ground zero. Right here it's showing a $15,000 deficit if those numbers hold true. And then we got to turn around, and I think it's 2038. It's not on here, and purchase yet another one. So that one in 38 most likely is going to need to incorporate maybe a lease, a capital lease on that, essentially as a loan, or maybe we can build it up. However, what may help this 2038 purchase is the fact that what all these towns are going to is one truck, a truck that can hold water and pump it, so you don't need two trucks, you can go with one truck. Apparently they're considering that it limits the ability for manpower, obviously, to go in one truck. They may need a utility truck or something like that. If the decision ultimately is to go with one truck, then this becomes probably a $500,000 purchase instead of an $800,000 purchase for two, which leaves us pretty good in 2038. The bottom line is the jury is still out on final decisions on this, and we got a couple years to get there, but we're on track to essentially cover ourselves into late 2038 on that. So I'm going to go over both, but I'm going to emphasize our budget without the appropriations. So this is the increase. So we have a 8.68% increase in highway, and we have a 5.4% increase in the general fund. Strangely enough, what does that leave us for an increase? 6.9%, which is exactly where we're at for inflation today. Again, the budget increase of 6.9% is right in line with where we're at for inflationary measures today. If you add if you add appropriations into that, and again, we got an increase of about 25,000 on that, then that increase jumps to about 7.25%. The general fund goes from a 5.4% increase to a 6.22% increase, giving us a 7.25. As far as the tax rate goes, and I'm working off of grand list numbers for this year. However, with new budgetary numbers, the tax rate for the general fund, interestingly enough, and I'll get into why this is in a moment, is not 5.4%, but is 8.51%. Takes a little bit of a jump, and again, there's an explanation for that, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to present that to everybody so that it makes sense, but I'll do my best. The highway fund tax rate is 8.16. It's actually a little bit below the 8.68, but that's because we also have increased revenue. It brings that tax rate down a little bit. We have a local tax rate. Again, this gives us a total tax rate increase of 8.3%. That's not a true, again, I'll come back to that. Just hold on to your hat, but that's on paper is an 8.3% increase. With appropriations, jumps to an 8.72%. Now, why that goes from 5.4 to 8.51. It's actually more than that. So I'm going to come over to the revenue side. And the actual increase here, the amount of money that we need to raise in taxes between last year and this year is actually a 9.27% increase. Okay? However, there is a number missing right here, this $35,000 number in pilot payments. That used to be separate. It used to be a separate, for lack of a better term, a separate system. It was a different billing. We didn't give them a tax bill. We gave them a bill. They paid based upon a contract with us. And last year we budgeted $35,000 for them. Well, if you remember, we did the reappraisals of the dams, and in doing that, we took that dam off of that contract, and they now receive a tax bill. So this number I really technically can't fill in as $35,000. I have to take it away because they now get a tax bill. So they're wrapped up in this 1,615,963 number. So to give you a flavor, so they're in here. They've got to pay at least $35,000 of that number. So if that $35,000 number were included, it's actually a 6.9% tax rate instead of the 9.27. And it's a 6.9 only because some of the other revenues aren't keeping up with our expenses. The other part of this is they're not paying $35,000 anymore either. They're paying $60,000. So it's a little deceiving. That percentage increase is a little deceiving because they're picking up actually more than they have historically. So the average person isn't picking up that entire amount. Kind of convoluted to say, but the best way to explain it is that $35,000 isn't there in the budget number to help offset that tax number above it, but they are paying it, and they're not only paying the $35,000, they're paying $60,000. So that percentage increase is most likely down around that 5.4. I just, technically, I really can't show it any other way. Maybe we can we can talk about it and come up with a real fancy way to, kind of explain that, but I didn't come up with it tonight. Budget increase is 6.9. I would say the tax rate falls, actually 6.9 with the 35 grand is right there to coincide with it. So we've been kind of nipping around the butt for a little bit now on this subject. And I thought that this would be a pretty good time to kind of address this. So, hey, we got all this money in the bank. We got like 15 reserve accounts. Let's just take some of that money and apply it to the budget and offset that tax increase or help the voter or all that good stuff. And I have nothing against helping the resident. And actually, in my opinion, these reserve accounts do exactly that. They add stability, they add consistency to the tax rate. We've got future projects that we've got coming down the pike that if you do away with the reserve accounts, then where do you go for that money? Maybe you get a grant, but you still have 20% that you're going to be on the hook for. You get a loan, but yeah, then you're just kind of paying like you would as if you were putting money into the reserve account, but now you're paying interest on it. So I want to just remind ourselves of some of the things that we've got kicking around out there, that some of this money has been pegged for or can or should be applied. So let's take Three Corners intersection right here. RFP is going out in January. Last spring, and again, a little bit different, the higher interest rates, the economy, we don't know where it's going, but last spring, that project was $500,000 over budget. So where do you go for that $500,000? What do you do? You've already bonded for $1,062,000. Right? Well, I've been saying this for quite a while now. That highway surplus is there for the Three Corners intersection project. So that Four Corners intersection project is $500,000 over. There's your backfill. And you get $90,000. However, the question then becomes, well, it's no longer spring, it's now a year later. That project could be $750,000 over. We're already $150,000 into this project for engineering. What's the break? Where do we cut loose? Well, for $750,000, we're going to eat up that highway surplus. It's taken us quite a while to build up, is gone. And now we're into ARPA for $159,585 or $385, but I think it's $585. Okay? If we're $300,000 over, well, then we haven't quite eaten that surplus up. And then, then we can start talking about some paving and some other things. That's probably quickly going to go to Queechee Road or someplace else. Again, Queechee Road is going to cost us $850,000 just to pave. That's not any under the underside of what needs to be done. Clay Hill Road is $75,000, actually $80,000 to $82,000 over what we've got budgeted for. It's I can say with certainty this year, we will not end up with a surplus in the highway. It may not be an $82,000 overage, but it's gonna be over. Your 590 possibly is gone with the Three Corners intersection. So we've talked about this, it never really pulled the trigger, but ARPA is next up. Clay Hill Road, which is in fiscal year '24, is 150 grand over. That 590 is looking pretty small at this point. You've got 75, and now you've got 150. Again, ARPA has been the discussion on that. Maybe we can absorb that $55,000. Oh, come on. With the inflationary raise, the 3.5% that we gave in January, it's possible we can absorb that. You know, yeah, the one guy that, with the insurance that we budgeted family for and as a single person, you know, so we got a little bit of money there, maybe, maybe not. If not, we already made a motion to take money out of ARPA for the 55.
Dave, you gotta stop doing that.
I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm hitting the center. So, Phil, in that transportation committee, the roads committee, culverts we were talking about, 200,000, 225 for a culvert. Norwich put in almost the exact same size culvert last spring. Cost them 350 grand. I was told that that probably won't hold going into next spring either. That one has already been designated for ARPA with a motion. Possibly if it ends up being 450, 500 grand, I would think maybe 450 to 425. Where can we go to backfill that? Well, we can go to the Culvert Reserve Fund, that $100,000 that we've got there. Yep, just a second. The only thing I would say is that we've got $100,000 in the Culvert Reserve today, possibly backfilling this one project here. I'll just state that the Katy Brook Trail going from Jennyville Road to the Katy Brook Trail, which feeds John Samuel and
John Caceres.
Caceres, they're on a legal trail, so technically they're kind of into that themselves, but we've also been working with the Conservation Commission in building up the Katy Brook Trail for visitors, and we've got signage out there and all that good stuff. So that culvert, which is basically being held together with a metal plate over it, and again is probably one of those $200,000 culvert jobs, is next in line. And then we have a culvert on Jennyville Road again, next to Densmore Hill Road, another $250,000 to $300,000 culvert. And we've got one on Brothers Road, a nice old stone culvert that's starting to fall apart. That one is a small bridge. So you can start to see where some of this money, you know, is seed money for the things that we've got coming down the pike, and we really don't know where we are until we get through some of these things. So for instance, Three Corners intersection is an unknown. We'll know that in the spring. That answers that question. The Damon Hall Rec Center, we'll know that at the end of next summer, like August or July, when by the time we get through the architects and they do the scoping study, $500,000, it could be 150, or it could be 750. Again, this was pegged with ARPA money, or at least the study, but I'm pretty sure we plan on doing the work to go with it. And then the Queechee Road study, again, $75,000 to $100,000. ARPA money. So depending on where we land, ARPA money, at a low, we spend 855,000. At a high, we don't have enough. And then we're down to culvert reserve, or we get into that capital reserve from the oil money that is for infrastructure such as Damon Hall or Rec Center or Queechee Road. Then we start eating into that. I've touched upon Queechee Road paving and reconstruction. Again, just to basically shim and overlay that's about 850 grand. So just a stab in the dark as far as cross culverts and base stone, slope reconstruction, easily is a $1.2 million project. We don't have enough reserve money, period. And now we're looking at bond money for something like that. But it would be nice to at least offset some of that with some of this money that we're trying to save up and continue to save up for. But there's other things out there that we don't talk about that are in desperate need. And the two next biggest things other than Damon Hall is the highway garage, which is front and center on a 1969 town report. And if you go by looking at it now, look at the bottoms and the water problems and basically the rust that you see there. I won't get into some of the things that kind of crawl around in there and the heat that we lose in that building. Again, a stab in the darkness, $1,500,000 project. And the salt shed that we get like maybe a storm and a half full is not too far behind. So I think that what I'm trying to say here is that, sure, we got money, but I think that what everybody is forgetting here is all the stuff that we've got still to do and is going to cost us an extreme amount of money. We don't talk about all of this. This is really a good time to do that. And we actually probably need to have something a little bit more formal than what we've got as far as, where we're putting, as far as how much we're putting away. But certainly there's thought to what's being put away and what we've got coming down the pike and how it's going to match up. Last thing I'll say is that general fund balance is not on here, and that's the one I envision as being untouchable until the day that the storm rolls in and you need $1 million to reconstruct Jennyville Road and et cetera, or we have inflation and gas goes berserk and we haven't budgeted some of those cushions in. I hate to even bring it up, but Chelsea obviously was one of those towns that didn't quite budget as they should. Select board is telling the highway crew not to go out and do anything because they're over budget on the fuel, and the next thing you know, there's no highway crew or select board. But the moral of that story is yeah, maybe every now and then we've got, for whatever reason, a cushion because insurance turnover. But anything that we've got for an extra is now pegged for something that we've got coming down the pike. And maybe we get through all of this a year, 18 months from now, and Three Corners intersection comes in under budget. Damon Hall Rec Center cost us $100,000 and not $500,000. And then we're like, yeah, okay, well, now we've got some choices to make. But at the moment, we don't have those answers. So that's kind of where we're at. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Will you entertain some questions on the general fund, Dave?
I think I had a couple on the general fund.
Yeah, Mary has, and so do I. So, Dave, let me know when you're ready.
Forgot for a moment where I was on the spectrum here.
That's easy. So this question is for, I think for you, Stacy, but it might be for Dave too, I don't know. So there's this solar installation going in North Heartland.
Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste District
Yes.
Solar Project, yep.
So when that's complete,
When it goes online, yep.
okay, we will be getting some good taxes there, right?
It'll go on the grand list, yes. So the land is already on the grand list. It'll be the solar installation that'll be calculated out, and that'll be a set amount. That's a set tax. It's done over the course of 20 to 30 years, depending on the life of the installation, and that stays the same. That won't increase
It doesn't
or
increase
decrease.
for-
No, they capitalize it and they pay a little bit lower right now than what they would if you had putting in a brand new installation, but that means you've got the same set assessment all the way through the life of the particular solar installation. So that they're, actually paying more at the tail end than probably what it's worth, but they take it all the way out. They're paying in full, it's just dispensed throughout the life of the project.
So when do you
Expecting.
think we will get that revenue?
My understanding, I have to double check, is that was supposed to go online this fall. So I've been meaning, I think I saw paperwork that kind of indicates that it just transferred into the the Hartland Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste District Solar. And if that's the case, then it's up and functioning, meaning it'll be on the grand list this coming spring. As long as it's up and running by January 1st, it's a little different with solar. Everything else is April 1st, but solar has to be online and running as of January 1st.
So might they put it off so that they're not up and, would there be a tax advantage to them to not get it going?
I don't think that they would do that intentionally. It's not my understanding why they would do that.
Do you
Because
have
they're
any
also not going to be generating revenue if they do that.
Yeah, that's right. So do you have any idea what that would?
I don't until I get all the paperwork on that.
Okay. Okay, but that's a really good thing, right?
That can be significant based on some of the others, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm, okay.
No, there's new building ongoing. I expect to see the grand list increase some this year. I don't know how much, but depends on what gets built and
Yeah.
finished by April 1st.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, I think, Dave, just back to the constable and state police. Totally get shifting money from one bucket to the other, makes sense. But my thought is that maybe the money should be budgeted under the state police and we should try to do the contract at the same hours again. Because if we back off those hours or back off that contract, we'll never get it back.
So right now, we're getting what they're giving us.
Right. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if they take the first step.
Yeah, could happen. I would just say, whatever we can do as a town to try to lock that in. Hopefully someday they have staffing again. I'd hate to lose that contract because we know they're not doing new ones.
I think that's been the mentality of the town since the beginning of police services for us. I'm just gonna put it out, the time may have come that it is difficult because James is doing a pretty good job. So he's picking up hours and stuff. The time may be here or soon that we need to consider if we're looking for greater police enforcement, some follow-up, some investigative work, et cetera. Windsor has a chief that is very well respected. They do have, like everybody else, they have a staff of police that's struggling to stay staffed, although they seem to be a little bit more consistent than everyone else. And I'm gonna say this with a straight face. You know, Ryan Palmer has come on, he's talking about doing some things with the towns from the sheriff's department that the sheriff's department really hasn't done before. I think that that's a tire that Hartland should probably kick at some point. I'm not saying it needs to be immediate, but I think that it's just, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vermont State Police takes the first step.
First step to get out of the contract?
Dissolve the contract.
Towns plural.
And we heard that in our meeting with the commander, Dave, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
I'm just think that this is a subject that I think, when we get through some of this building and some of the things immediately in front of us, I think that we may want to pick this one up at some point.
But in the meantime, what's your thought? Is your thought that we should continue to try to renew this contract at the current rate?
Try and renew it. I'm on air, so I want to be a little bit careful what I say, but I believe that the Vermont State Police stood, can't remember if it was upstairs or downstairs, but he was at one of our meetings. He spoke very sure of himself that this year he would be able to follow through on the hours that they weren't picking up in the year prior. That was put to him very specifically by me and I think by the select board. His answer was yes, we're gonna do it, and we're getting less.
But I guess my question is, should we still try to renew that contract at the current number of hours to be on the safe side?
I have left that money in there to renew it with somebody, whether it's the Vermont State Police, and I'm open to that.
But some of that money shifted out of that bucket to the constable bucket. So
Yep,
my suggestion is,
And maybe we shift some of it back.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's not gonna be like a light switch flicks on and the Vermont State Police is gonna wake up January 2nd and all of a sudden start fulfilling all 15 hours.
Right.
You know, he said even at their best staffing, if we get 8, is going to be good, you know, which is why, you know, I've been looking at James, because I'm thinking that, you know, even on their best day, James is gonna be picking up the slack. So the best answer I'm gonna give you, Jim, is I think that we need to keep an open mind on it.
Yeah.
And I think that they have served us well for as long as they've been doing it. They're not in the best position to pick up that and provide it. So I think that at some point, it'll get to where we need to have that discussion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just suggesting that for now, let's do everything we can to try to keep that contract renewed at the current number of hours.
We haven't done anything different.
Except we've moved money from that line to a different line.
But can we not then reduce the constable hours and just shift it back to the
I-
state police? Should they?
I budget as what I know today. And that's, I feel pretty
Yeah,
strongly that
we can
James
move
is
on.
gonna play a role.
Just another question, just around the walking trails for the rec center.
Yeah.
Is that a project that's likely to take off in the next year?
I think we would, I know John would very much like it to. I think I would like it to. I think that the budgeting amount is questionable. Obviously, we've got some priorities there as to whether resurfacing or try and do the project for 33 grand. I gave it some thought this fall, and I've talked to John a little bit, and I've talked to Bill a little bit about this based upon some of the estimates that came in for the Jennyville Road work, which was far exceeded the 33. I think there were 43 was like the lowest, all the way up to 173 or something silly like that. So I'm a little weary that it can actually be done for 33. So whether we try and pluck off some of the other priorities and save up for that, or whether we put it out and go for try and do it for the 33, I think is something still being discussed.
Just seems like it would be nice to spend some money for the town on something that's not a road.
So what I can say is the money that 33 grand is for something other than a road.
And, yeah, last, you know, I don't want to open a debate here, but are you under the impression that we approved, I forget what the number was, 350,000 for the Jennyville culvert?
Yeah, we did back in July, I believe.
What was the ARPA money, what was the ARPA number for that project in the proposal? Do we remember?
We didn't give it a number. We didn't say we're gonna vote 250 grand. I think the vote was, we're gonna go and do the study on the rec center and Damon Hall and move forward with the Jennyville Road culvert. I don't believe we divvied out numbers for each three of those.
I thought that there was a number in the,
It was 200,000 on
yeah, it's
the, what they
200,000.
sent us.
So I thought that that was the motion, but again, we don't have to debate that tonight. We can walk away and debate that on a future agenda item. So, yeah,
Let me just put it this way. I'm not putting an RFP out unless it's a go. Okay, so we're either in this or we're not. You know, so are we, you know, my understanding is that the Jennyville Road culvert, and I'm not sure why we wouldn't, someone's gonna drive off the damn thing and kill themselves.
yeah,
It's down to one lane. The wooden side things there are gone, so we've got some reflectors up. It blew out Jennyville Road 2 to 3 years ago. So
yeah.
let me turn the question.
I don't want to debate it.
Let
Not
me
saying we
ask,
shouldn't
but
do it,
let me
David.
ask the board then, what exactly ARPA projects do we have? Because my understanding is the rec building, Damon Hall, and Jennyville Road were a go. We needed the scoping study to figure out how much of the rec center and Damon Hall we were going to do. And we've already moved forward on that process for rec center and Damon Hall. I'm not going to take that step if it's, well, you know, it's only 200 grand, because if things start coming back and the engineering itself is 60 grand, sorry folks, forget it. We're going to spend the ARPA money on something else. We sit through an ARPA meeting and we talk about doing something. Oh, that's too expensive. We move to something else. My understanding is that these three items were a go, and that's what we're moving forward on. So if there's hesitation at the board, let's hear it now.
There's a fourth item, the Quechee Road engineering study.
What's that?
We had the fourth item as well, the Quechee Road engineering study.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, and I'm very comfortable with our plan, and I'm not aware that we're changing anything.
All right, so I think we just have different recollections, Phil, but again, we don't have to debate it tonight. But what I thought I was voting for was the number in the ARPA report, that was $200,000. Not saying we shouldn't do the culvert, okay?
I understand
Not saying we
that.
shouldn't do that.
I understand
But I
that,
just
but-
didn't understand, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we voted on an unlimited supply of money, whatever it takes to do that culvert.
Okay. Jim, if you're finished, I'll have
Yeah, I'm done.
a
Thank you.
question. My question is more of not a question, it's really just a concern. We all know that the healthcare industry has been in flux and crisis, and our own expenses have been climbing as individuals. My concern is that we don't create a bias in our hiring policies by saying we have two individuals of equal capacity for meeting the job requirements, but one's single and one's married, so let's hire the cheaper medical policy. So I just worry about that, and as we have a very small staff, but maybe we need to begin to look at some sort of way of preventing that. And again, it's just an observation.
Yeah, but when you're interviewing someone, you're prohibited from asking their family marital status, right? So,
I'm just opening up the,
Never comes up.
well, if I listened to our conversation tonight, we were so proud that this person wasn't this and that. So-
right, I mean, but that's
And
just
I can
happenstance.
just tell you from previous experience at another place where I worked, this became an issue.
But that's maybe because you knew who the interviewees were, like, if they're all history professors, you know.
All I'm saying is it's a slippery slope. And yeah, if everyone is, the hiring manager is impeccably doing the right job, and
So just how it usually works is we hire somebody on, and then a couple weeks down the road, when I'm going
Right.
through the warrants,
right,
there's either a request for the quarterly stipend, or it pops up, and I'm like, oh, okay. Or I usually ask, like, you know, hey, how about what happened to so-and-so? Oh, he hasn't taken insurance. There's usually a surprise there for me. I think we can all, I can't speak, I'm been fairly in tune to even most of the elected interviews and et cetera of the elected officers.
sure,
But
the interview part is one part of that. I mean, if you have two equally paid employees that are
Yep.
working side by side, I mean, and one has the family policy and one has a single policy, ultimately their total compensation is different.
So let me put a little at ease on this.
Yep.
So, and this has actually been the other side of the coin on this discussion tonight. I don't think it's been on, are we gonna hire because he has.
No, and I don't want to.
The discussion has actually been, we actually budget for the hire.
Okay,
So, and if it's the lower, then so be it. But we generally hire for we budget for someone assuming they're going to come in with the family plan. So it's usually set in place unless the turnover has been like it was in 2022, fall of 2022, spring of 2021, where we have somebody left, and the person that left may have been single, and then it's like, but there's just kind of an assumption that, okay, we're gonna get hit on this, but again, we don't make that decision, and we can't,
right.
you know, there's just an assumption on our part that if we're gonna have an overage, that's where it may occur. So, but we usually go the other way and prepare for that.
Right.
And if it's something different, then so be it.
Clyde, Andy? Okay. Thank you. It's a lot of numbers, a lot of work to get here. We're going to have one more session coming up next meeting.
Next one's a little bit more, you know, this is kind of highlighted the big movers. We'll drill down a little bit on some of the individual departments, you know, like Brian, and some of the things that, he doesn't have a whole lot going on, but some of the things that are less, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the listers and some of the other stuff, and not more importantly, but you'll have separate presentations from the library and the fire folks.
Okay. Do we want to take a few minute break, just
Yes.
5 minutes, and then we'll go on to the manager's update?
Yes,
Okay,
Oh, that's really all we have left.
yeah,
I need to stand up.
okay, we're just going to take a 5-minute break. And, Okay. Dave, you want to go to the manager's report?
So pretty quick, we've already talked about Three Corners intersection and the rec center in Damon Hall. The one thing I have to add, I guess, is there is maybe a little bit of movement on Sean's position. I think I have two people that are potential candidates, radically different than what Sean was. Gives us a couple options either way. Some have really no experience in this. But I can see them doing a really good job. And another one has more of an emergency response background, which would really kind of lean towards the 911, like deputy health officer and, you know, some other things that we also have voids in, as well as picking up the ordinance and the other enforcement, et cetera. Just wouldn't lean towards the planning component that I had Sean doing. So a little bit different, still covering the basics, but maybe have strengths in other places. We'll see where that goes, but I think that both two in and of themselves are pretty good candidates. Highway Department, as you know, we had snow last Wednesday, I think it was. It's always really difficult. You've got 70-degree weather the day, or literally like 4 or 5 days before. 65 degrees, the roads, at least the dirt roads are still really soft. You can't really plow it, so you spend a fair amount of time putting down sand. Some unhappy people because they expect you to drop the plow, but it's just not. You get 3-4 inches of snow, and they don't understand why it may not be plowed itself. But if you drop the plow, it really kind of, you end up bulldozing the dirt, so it's just really kind of tough. So I just want to take a moment to kind of put that out there. I thought they did a good job. Bill was out, picked up by Doug, and, you know, they kind of shared duties. But they, you know, kind of banded together and did it. Did well, and we'll see. Hopefully with the cold weather, it's frosted up the roads a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to plow. We have a half day on Wednesday, no work on Friday as well. That's all I got.
Dave, I've been reading Gilson Road. I just want to clarify, are we talking about the paved section on the west side of Gilson toward Route 5?
So the side towards Route 5.
Yeah.
So that, from Route 5 up to Mount Hunger.
Right, okay.
So we've had trouble here historically. They've rebuilt it once in Bob's day. It's a really deep gully going from Gilson Road down to the water source there.
Right.
And the road is sliding there again as well. You can see a little bit of the guardrail. That and just the drainage and repaving and et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, we're set with a motion to adjourn.
No.
Is there any correspondence?
So we have Merrick Campbell.
Oh, yes.
And I believe
I have it right there.
I believe can be done in the way I envision. I think can be done in open session without getting into too much detail, unless somebody wants to have deeper discussion.
I would make a motion that we authorize the town manager to use Merrick Campbell funds to assist with the fuel purchase.
I'll second that. Are we open for discussion?
Is there any discussion?
Thank you. Why, yes, there is.
Oh.
I thought the amount was too low, as you may imagine, I would think, because
I know the amount was very low. having just had sticker shock putting fuel in. from my own
Right,
car
exactly,
personally.
exactly.
But this was recommended by a case manager, and I don't know if we want to really meddle.
Well,
with-
we didn't, we went for the average, not the top number. So,
I always-
suggested by the case manager.
Okay, I wasn't aware there was a,
That's what I do with you guys all the time. I shoot for the middle there.
Well, and sometimes that's fine, you know, but in this case, but it's a done deal, right? It's done.
The card that went out and to be reimbursed has gone out, yes.
Okay, well, if that request happens to come in again, I would like us to dig a little deeper. That's,
okay, I understand what you're saying, and I think we were just I was reacting to the suggested amount, especially since there was a case manager. Okay, any other thoughts?
so we gotta take a motion,
Did we have a motion?
and we have to take a vote.
And I was going to ask for the vote on the
Okay,
motion.
sorry.
For
Wanna make sure we didn't
Campbell
forget.
District. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Is there any correspondence?
Yes.
Okay, I knew you had something there.
Courtney Merritt has stepped down, not going to get it right. Yep, she's got it right here. The Mount Escutney Region Subcommittee of the Connecticut River Joint Commission. She was a member, her and Judy Howland. She has resigned, she stepped down.
Yeah. And she attended those meetings and gave full reports to the Conservation Commission. She should be commended for her work.
I think she was pretty dedicated to it. I think
Yep.
both her and Judy are.
But this is good, there's someone who's indicated interest.
Sarah White from the Conservation Commission has.
Wood.
What's that?
Sarah White.
Sarah.
She's
White.
got wood down
I think
here.
it's White.
Oh, okay.
Another Conservation Commission member. Through the grapevine, I've heard that Sarah is interested, but I've yet to see anything.
Okay.
She should submit something, and
Right.
that may be in the works, but so far, Cordy has expressed that. I think that they've talked about this at the Conservation Commission, and
That's great,
we'll take one step at a time.
yeah.
Did she represent Hartland or represent?
I believe she represents Hartland, as we are a border town of the
Okay.
Connecticut River.
If it's okay with the board, I'll see if I can get her address and just drop her a thank you note.
Well, that'd be great.
Get her a plaque.
I'm sorry?
Get her a
Get
plaque.
back.
Jim?
She may go up there.
Yeah, she might be up there already, they've already got their plaque.
Now, what can you, okay. Any other correspondence?
No, but we have another item, agenda item, from the adjustments.
Yes, he does.
I want to talk about the cemetery thing.
I thought we put that on.
We're
for
gonna,
future.
okay, so we're gonna put that on another,
Yeah,
okay,
otherwise,
yeah,
Maybe a
right,
mutiny.
we'll be here forever, okay, that's fine.
okay. Future agenda items include legal trail, class 4 roads and right-of-way policies, and the cemetery policy.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry. So can we make a motion that, that the individual who wrote to us requesting space in the cemetery be allowed to purchase space in the Gallopweed Cemetery? Do we have to do sonar searches when we already know that from the map, that part of the cemetery, the upper, towards the road, the upper right is empty?
I don't know who makes those decisions.
We do.
I guess I'd want more information before I
Say,
said I approved anything.
okay.
I don't know how everyone else feels, but that's, I
So
don't feel
that-
like I know enough.
So that would mean then, to get more definite information, I guess we'd have to hire a sonar person.
Well, and Clyde also suggested if it was close to the fence by this and.
Well, that's where the map
I didn't
indicates.
get it there, I couldn't. Fortunately, I didn't work there.
Well, but that's where the map, what you're saying
Yeah.
coincides with what the map shows.
Uh,
That there's no
this is
burials there.
This is the one from the Marchman survey.
I don't know, it's the one I saw online. I don't know what it's.
I'll have to look online.
Oh,
Was on, I mean, where was it? Was it on the Historical Society?
it probably was, yeah. I was looking at a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I'm trying to check that out.
Okay. All right, well, so we'll keep,
Have you let them know that it's,
I let her know that there's room, I believed, in the Gallup Weed Cemetery, and that we were gonna talk about it some more. But this person's not gonna live forever.
You really think we're that slow?
Huh?
Are we that slow?
We are pretty slow,
yeah, I don't like the responsibility of someone digging up a spot, finding another.
I know, I know that, but this, we don't seem to ever get anywhere on this topic. This has been going on for a number of years now. The cemetery committee, of which my husband is a member, has been of no help. So, somehow we gotta resolve this. Dave, do you wanna weigh in here?
You don't want to hear it. I think we're pending further information.
And where's that information gonna come from?
I think you raised your hand on it.
Yes, I know, but that means I've gotta find somebody, we gotta hire somebody to do sonar, and is there money? Can you tell me that there's money that I can go ahead and do that?
Depends on how much.
Right, okay. All right, then that's on me then to find the next.
There's actually like $4,000 in the cemetery commission budget, but if we're gonna start actually burying people, I think that then that money becomes very important. So hate to sound like a broken record, but it really kind of depends.
All right, that's on me. I'll do something.
Well, I figured that
All right.
because they weren't 100% sure what all
Okay.
they were.
You set?
Just been told
Yeah.
by the cemetery.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor? Oh, we don't have to really vote.
We don't have
we?
to do that, we can just
Okay.
say, yay!
Thank you.
That's on tape.
Thanks, everybody.